Hi everyone, today I wanted to give you a demo of a new functionality that was added into DataGraph version 5.1. This is in the box command, and we're calling this the point plus interval option. This is something that definitely came about because of people asking for further options within the box command. So let me go ahead and get started and show you what this is all about. I think this is going to be a really helpful functionality for many people. We're going to start by generating a set of random data where we know what the distribution is. We can do this by going over here to the data panel, and you're going to create an expression column. In that expression column, we'll add the nrand, so N-R-A-N-D function. And in that function, there's two arguments that it expects, two input variables. And the first one is going to be the mean value of this random data that we generate, and the second one's going to be the distribution. So I'm setting up getting a random set of numbers that will have a mean of 0 and a standard deviation of 1. Notice when you hit enter on that, it's going to then ask you, well, how many of these do you want? And I can type in, for example, 100 of these, and sure enough, now I have my data. I'm going to give this column a title. Just call this values. And I also want to set this up so I can have this animate and be be somewhat dynamic. So instead of just typing in the set of numbers, I'm actually going to use the animation variable down here on the bottom left corner. By default, this is called T. Time is often one of the things we animate, but I'm going to change this to N. You can call it whatever you like. So this is a built-in slider that you can use to change, have values vary from one to another. So let's have this go right now from 1 to 100. We'll have this be an integer, and as I move this, the value is shown right here. Okay, so to hook this in, I'm going to then have the number of rows be n, and then let's actually just have this start from the beginning. So now you can see how it's going to generate these numbers for me and give me a data set where I know, again, what the mean and the standard deviation are. Now, one way to check this very quickly without even getting into the commands is just to click the top, the header, select the column, and hit the space bar. And when you do, you'll get the quick graph overview of this data, which is a histogram, very appropriate for what we're doing. And sure enough, it shows you that the mean appears to be 0. In fact, the mean is also calculated here. Comes out to 0.093 for this set of random numbers that I generated. You also see how the distribution itself, since it is a normal distribution with a standard deviation of 1, and the mean of 0, we would expect about 95% of the data to be within the from -2 to 2, and sure enough, that looks like what we have here. Now let's add our box command. And to do this, the first thing that I would suggest is to have your column of data highlighted. So again, click on the header to do that. And then go under the Draw menu. This is where we'll see a list of a whole bunch of different commands. Down here you see there is the box command. If you're not familiar with this command, there's a question mark right there that you can click to go to the help. There's a lot of examples there on how to use it. We're going to just do some simple diagrams here to show you how this works. But go ahead and click Add. Okay, so here we see a box plot. You're probably very familiar with this. This is a common way of representing a distribution of data where we have the median value is a line. You sometimes have outlier points that are shown here, and we have the whiskers, which are the min and the max, excluding any outliers that are defined. I'm not going to go into the details of how we define outliers here now. You can, again, go to the help page if you want to learn more. Oh, and the 50th percentile is within the box itself. That's what's called the inner quartile range. Now, what's handy about the box command, what you see here is, here's the menu where you'd select what column you're going to show. You can also group these and have multiple box commands. That's where you would change the menu here. We're just going to do the single column. But the type of graphic that you show is under this menu here. And notice there's a bunch of different things here. And what I often do, and what I recommend you try, is overlaying many, or maybe not many, but overlaying multiple box commands to get sort of interesting effects with your graphics. So for example, here, I've already got this one set up. I can copy this and paste it with this command selected. Now there's two of them, and I could change this type to points. Now I can see all the underlying points that are in this data set. I might want to change the color on this. And when you expand the box command, the options that you see within it are always going to vary depending upon what type you're drawing, how you're representing your data. But here, for example, I could change this to I don't know, maybe we'll make these orange. So that offsets that a little bit. And in fact, if we draw the box and whisker, notice I changed this order because this bottom one is drawing all the points, but I do have this one outlier. So to see that in the in black, as this is shown, then you can again change the order of these so that the box and whisker is drawn on top of my points. Okay, I hope that makes sense. But the new option that I want to show you again is this point plus interval option. So let's make another command. Again, I can copy and paste my command, and we're going to add this one called point plus interval. Now, so I can set this apart a little bit. I'm going to change the location here just so you can see it. But again, you could overlay this on top of this. Actually, maybe I'll leave it overlaid for just a minute. Maybe you don't even want to show the box and whisker diagram here, but you want to show a point, and we can make that point a little bit more prominent, and the min and the max of this data. So for example, here's me overlaying, two different box commands and getting kind of an interesting representation of this data. But let me move this again over to the side because I want to compare, and we'll go back and show the box diagram again. As I explore these options, I want you to be able to see how many points I have here. And to do that, I can actually just put this in my title. So I'm going to, within the title, say n is equal to, and click to the right to add the variable itself as a token. We'll select that, hit enter, and hit enter one more time. There we go. Now we can see this. I also bumped up the size of this a bit so that you can, again, hopefully see this a little bit better. So now as I change how many points I have, you can see the value on the graphic. And again, this first option with the point plus interval, this is showing me the median value and the min and the max across all of the data. To use other options, we can go ahead and expand this command. And the first thing I wanted to point out is you don't always have to show the point and the interval. I can hide the point, for example, and show just an interval. I can do the same thing with my line. To do that, you would change the line style to no line. Then you could just show the point. So for example, if you wanted to have the mean point also shown on the box command, that's a request that we've had from several people, actually. So this makes that a lot easier to do that. But let's go back to showing you again the median, and I want to go down the list of these options. So the first one, besides showing the min and the max, is to show a percentile value. Now this is a percentile around the median. So if I make this really, really small, those lines are going to collapse wherever the median point is. But if I make this, for example, 50th, that's my inner quartile range. If I make this a 95th percentile value or even a 99th percentile value, this gives you a representation. This is non-parametric. There's no assumption about what the distribution is. This is just looking at the data and saying that 99% of the values are within this range. So sometimes showing the percentile is a good option for, again, showing a range of the data. Maybe I'll go ahead and make this, again, 90th, showing you where most of the data is without being as impacted by outlying points that you might have within your data set. The next option that I want to show you are related to using the mean values. And these, again, you can change these independently. So this is one thing to be aware of. If I change now to the mean, there's going to be a pop-up that reminds me the interval you have is around the median point, not the mean. The intervals that are around the mean point are these other two options, the confidence interval and the prediction interval. And let's start with the confidence interval. So this is going to tell me, let me make my point maybe a little smaller here so you can see this. This is going to tell me how well I know my mean value. And if you move this over to the side, and let's go ahead and make my points here a lot less, and I want to animate this to show you what happens as I add more and more points. You can see how that confidence interval around the mean is shrinking and getting smaller and smaller. This is because the more data that I have, the better I know the mean value for this data set. And again, I also happen to know the mean should be 0, and that's what we're seeing here. The other interval around the mean that we have is a prediction interval. This is a very different type of interval. So if I change this, as we add more and more data, this isn't going to shrink down like the confidence interval around the mean did. This is actually telling me how likely, if I picked a new point, how likely is it to be within this range given some certain percentile. So again, here's my 90th percentile value. And as my data expands, the percentile is going to stabilize as I have more and more points, but it doesn't shrink all the way down. Again, it's, well, unless I have a very low prediction interval here that I change. But for example, if I change this to 95, so this is the 95th prediction interval around my normal distribution. And just to be clear, again, these are assuming a normal distribution. Then if I get to the point where I have a lot of data, then I would expect my 95th percentile to be within 2 standard deviations, plus or minus 2 standard deviations of my mean value. Here's 2, and here's -2. And that's basically what I'm getting here. That's what I would expect. And the more points I have, and I can have a lot more points and go up to, say, 1,000 points. Now I'm going to need to make my point size a little bit smaller, but that's fine. And again, here I am, 2 and -2. In fact, what I really should do to use DataGraph is just draw a couple of lines at those locations. So -2 and 2, this is using the lines command. I can draw them in the Y direction. And here you can see how my percentile value is corresponding to that. Because again, it's a normal distribution. I have a lot of data here. If I make my number of points much less, I don't have enough points yet to characterize that as well until I get a lot more points here. The last thing I want to show you is that if you want to see the exact values of whatever interval it is that you're showing, you can expand your command and you'll see there's the lower and the upper value shown within this table that gives you all these other summary statistics about your distribution that you're looking at. You can also use the standard approach that's throughout DataGraph of extracting either the individual values into variables, or if you're doing a command where you have the data grouped according to some other variable and multiple box commands, you can extract this as a column. Well, you can do this even if it's just one. But so in any case, it gives you the ability to get the exact values. And if I click this here, for example, this gives me the lower value, and I can get the upper value. And then you could also plot those as other, in other commands. I could have that, in fact, be what I put into my lines command so that I could show the lower and upper values here. Oh, actually, we'll make a copy of this, the lower and the upper. So now this is showing me what's actually coming from my box command itself, the interval range with which this distribution falls. So I hope that this was helpful to get you interested in trying out this option within this command. Of course, if you have any questions, definitely let us know. And we will have a new version of DataGraph actually coming out very soon, DataGraph version 5.2. So stay tuned for that.